What if you discover that the goal you achieve in the future is in fact being already achieved in this given present moment of your life? That's what we will see in the Lotus Sutra's implication for the Buddhist idea of rebirth. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this two-part video series on the concept of rebirth. As the first part of the topic, this video answers following questions. What is the Buddhist idea of rebirth in both pre-Mahayana and Mahayana Buddhism? How does the meaning of rebirth change in this transition from pre-Mahayana to Mahayana? So to start off, in this video, I will give you an overview of the idea of rebirth in Buddhism. And the next video, the second video, talks about the idea of rebirth in the context of the Lotus Sutra. So getting oriented to yourself in this video is crucial for learning and enjoying the next one. So that's why watching this is beneficial for your learning of the Lotus Sutra. So here's an agenda for today. First, I will talk about rebirth in terms of the contrast between karma-based undesired rebirth in pre-Mahayana and the vow-based desired rebirth in Mahayana. And after that, I will talk about the significance of this transition. So my view is not a reflection of any particular groups of Buddhism or anything. This is my personal take of what I learned in Buddhism. Let's dive into it. In its beginning, Buddhism adopted the worldview of rebirth that was already accepted back in India. But after this concept was taken into the tradition, Buddhism developed this indigenous idea of rebirth and eventually invented key ideas about this concept that became essential to the history of Buddhist thought. In a nutshell, rebirth in pre-Mahayana Buddhism was considered to be something undesired and happens as a result of your karma. Rebirth means that you will have to undergo the cycles of life after life after life and after life. So given this undesired loop of rebirth, seeing that life is suffering, Buddhism promoted the view that our lives are the series of experience of the gap between what is given in the present and what is not given in the present. So what creates this gap is your desire. So you are dissatisfied with the given experience of here and now, and instead desire what is not the given experience, desiring what is there and sometime rather than here and now. So the idea of the buzzing word mindfulness is all about being aware of the present. And the idea is coming from this Buddhist aspiration for the end of suffering. This desire for what is not given creates and accelerates the karmic power for generating our future lives, getting you further caught up in the cycle of rebirth. So the Buddhist suggestion was to say, okay, let's end this suffering. Let's end this karmic power. The key is to end the cause of suffering. That is your desire for this external search. Once you cease this desire, you will no longer have to be born in this world and therefore can get out of the cycle of rebirth. So nirvana or enlightenment meant to get away from this cycle of rebirth. Samsara, the world of suffering. In short, in pre-Mahayana Buddhism, you see a stark contrast between enlightenment and rebirth, nirvana and samsara, and they were always mutually exclusive to one another. And the next question is, how did this picture get altered in Mahayana Buddhism? As Buddhism developed, people started to wonder, it is great to end suffering of your own, but what will happen to those who are unable to get out of this ceaseless loop cycle of suffering? Then these curious questioners made a vow to aspire, to reach out to, and liberate all living beings out of suffering. So because of this vow, instead of getting out of the cycle of rebirth, cycle of suffering, they rather decided to delay their final enlightenment so that they can still maintain this last tiny bit of karma in order to be reborn again and again and again and again until the end of suffering of all. In this picture, Bodhisattva desired the cycle of suffering. cycle of rebirth. These guys who made such a vow to liberate all living beings are called bodhisattvas, enlightened beings. And as a footnote, in pre-Mahayana Buddhism, bodhisattva meant only a Buddha. But in Mahayana, the possibility of becoming a Buddha was in a way opened up to anyone who learns and practices the Buddha's teachings. So that said, finally, here's what I want to say about this. An interesting transformation of rebirth is happening in this transition from pre-Mahayana to Mahayana Buddhism, it seems like. In pre-Mahayana, rebirth meant an undesired consequence that occurs as a result of one's previous karmas. In contrast, in Mahayana, rebirth rather meant a desired consequence. Rebirth was desired that occurs as a result of one's previous karmas. So rebirth was undesired in the beginning, and yet it turned out to be something desired eventually. So what remains the same is the phenomena of rebirth itself, but what changed in this transition from pre-Mahayana to Mahayana is the meaning of rebirth. It was something undesired, but now it is something desired. So speaking in terms of our discussion of suffering, in pre-Mahayana, in the sense, rebirth used to create a gap between the undesired rebirth and desired nirvana. But in Mahayana, rebirth no longer created this gap because there, rebirth was desired and nirvana for all beings was also desired. So rebirth, nirvana were desired at the same time. Then the original mutually exclusive distinction between them turned out to end up showing the identity between them. So this is another practical and beautiful aspect of Buddhism that embraces seeming paradox, which I love about. And then in the Lotus Sutra, this identity between nirvana and samsara gets even more interesting when it is considered in terms of the Buddha's eternal life that appears in the Sutra of chapter 16. And I want to thank my friend Chris Ryan for his inspiration for reading the concept of rebirth in terms of the Buddha's eternal life in the Lotus Sutra. But the details about the Lotus Sutra take and the rebirth will be revealed in that next video. So thank you for watching, everyone, but please stay tuned.